Today on the Topping Show Vivek on Biden censoring Americans goes viral. Light Bling tweet is roasted with Yuengling being the top comment. Target goes viral for using fake Black Friday signs. The prices never really changed. In fact, 80% Arms gets a win for the Second Amendment. DeSantis War Room highlights Iowa governor endorsing DeSantis. Buy now, pay later help fuel Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Volkswagen to decrease staff count and admits they are, quote, no longer competitive as a brand. And Honda to recall 300,000 vehicles due to a seatbelt issue. However, the Civics are still safe. All of that and much more on The Topping Show. Thank you everyone for taking the time to tune in today. Today's episode of Topping Show is sponsored by Topping Technologies. Topping Technologies is an IT value-added reseller and services company with a special proficiency in IT security. Heck, I see their founder at least twice a day. Gotta say he's quite handsome and brilliant. He's me, you see, that's the joke. If you're an IT leader or a business owner, you can reach the team at sales@toppingtechnologies.com. We're also trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of December, so if you could click that button, I would greatly appreciate it. Now, going over to the business part of the podcast, you have Buy Here, Pay Here, bolstering Black Friday and Cyber Monday sales. Now, this is also part of the larger trend where I can help but also notice, anecdotally speaking, every time you buy darn near anything online, from a case for a guitar to random funny second thing, you always see the option for the Buy Here, Pay Here, the payment plans. It's gotten to the point where you actually do a payment plan for a pizza, which I believe is offered via Domino's or some of the major brands. You know, the finances of Americans and the economy might be in trouble when people are financing pizzas. Not pizza machinery, which costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. That does make sense to, have that piece of equipment depreciate over time. No, actual pizzas are being financed. Now, going to the specific article by Daniel Gianvosi on Fox Business, it noted that Cyber Monday sales reached $12.4 billion, and they're partially in favor bolstered by the Buy Here, Pay Here later. They also noted that Buy Here, Pay Here later has accounted for $9.3 billion in online spending through November. Now, this is according to the latest data from Adobe. They also noted that this is a 9.6% increase year over year and even outpaces Adobe's initial projection according to the earlier data. However, the spending is largely being driven by Buy Here, Pay Here later options as more and more Americans try to struggle and try to overcome the inflation that our government has so brilliantly created themselves, at least to the most part of their fault. Both sides, by the way. Now, they also noted that usage of such services hit an all-time high on Cyber Monday, accounting for $940 million. Americans are spending $940 million, or they spent $940 million in one day on crap they don't need, which I find personally astonishing considering, as you can tell from my wardrobe, I like to buy something and make it last for quite a while. And a wise man always said men should always suit up, and suit will never go out of style, obviously. I can't help but imagine spending $940 million on stuff you don't need. This isn't stuff like medical procedures or life-changing, knickknacks that are going to save your life, or maybe there's a small likelihood it'll empower your life or make your life more efficient. But that is astonishing. Anecdotally speaking, I did a little bit of shopping for small gifts for family for Christmas, and I bought some marketing materials for my IT company because there's some durable things that we'll purchase and then we'll actually use next year for some of the events that we host. But I can't imagine spending so much. And they also know that's a 42.5% increase year over year, while cart sizes also rose 11% annually. Now, I'm not too surprised about the actual cart sizes, aka the actual size of the per transaction, since, again, inflation is getting ridiculously out of hand, so the cost of darn near everything has increased per unit or per item. So I'm not too surprised the actual carts have also increased as well. And it looks like one of those popular ones, and again, I've seen this company everywhere. So they're A+ for marketing because every time there's an option to buy something, it seems like this company is always right next to that checkout, and it says their name. So it's Affirm Holdings, and their stock is bolstered up to $32.15 per share. Looks like it was helped bolstered by, lately it's went up 9.47%. Jeez Louise, what's their... Yeah, that company's doing ridiculously good. So it'll be interesting to see Again, consumer debt is reaching all-time high. Credit card debt passed $1 trillion for the first time in U.S. history. That was earlier this fiscal year. And again, it's a double-edged sword because it's a services economy. You do need consumers to spend money, but again, they're spending money that many of them, not all, that they don't have. And that's where this vicious cycle kind of continues to go and go. It'll be interesting to see. Hopefully, these purchases are too burdensome for the individuals. They can pay it off quickly. Although, given the ineptitudes in public schools, they probably are not aware of the interest rates or the actual amount they're paying for interest. Don't get me wrong, there's like 19 really good public schools in the United States, probably. But I can't help but notice the majority of them don't teach you the basic life skills or really many things that are valuable, which has led to a lot of cultural issues as well as fiscal issues of people not understanding many fiscal things, which is why I'm a big proponent of homeschooling and private schools. But that's just my 3 cents. Used to be 2 cents, but 40-year hyperinflation got me 3 cents. Though, still free to click the subscribe button below. Now, other interesting business news, you have Volkswagen to decrease headcount while they're ramping up their EV production, and they're saying that their brand is quote-unquote no longer competitive, which is disappointing to say at least. Volkswagen used to be one of the most powerful, one of the most impressive automotive manufacturers on the planet. It's one of those instances where Volkswagen Group, at one point, they owned pretty much every brand that you knew and loved. It's one of those instances where, I forget, the CEO of Volkswagen when I was in high school, was it Peach? It's eluding me at the moment, but I had a great respect for their engineering capabilities back then, because not only did they own all the brands, but they wanted to be the best of both worlds. So they actually developed at the time, the Bugatti Veyron, the most powerful, fastest car on the planet, while at the simultaneous time having another engineer, another department at Volkswagen, they created the most fuel-efficient car on the planet. I believe it was 300 miles per a gallon of gasoline, which is insanely efficient. Now, the downside is there's a lot of cost for that vehicle. That's why I believe they only made about 300 to 500, and it's extremely expensive, lightweight materials like carbon fiber. But from an engineering perspective, they were astonishing. And of course, they also own Porsche, which is one of the best sports cars companies out there to this date, partially because they still make vehicles with 3 pedals, also known as a manual transmission, aka the best experience you'll ever have driving, bar none. As long as you have a modicum of heart and a little bit of excitement in you, you will greatly benefit from that experience. I can't recommend it enough. Now, Volkswagen, again, they owned all those companies, including you had Lamborghini, you had Ducati, which is perhaps the most well-known fast motorcycle company. Anecdotally, from my experience, made famous because of the Matrix films back in the day. That was when the hero bikes, or the bikes that got a lot of screen time. Now, this specific article talking about the demise of Volkswagen comes from Reuters, and it's specifically written by someone they don't want to give credit, apparently. Jeez Louise. They give credit to the person who took the photo. Do I have to scroll down? Okay, here we go. So it says reporting by Victory Mulders, writing by Matthias Williams, edited by Miranda Murray and David Goodman. That's a little disappointing. As always, you gotta scroll. They're already at the bottom. Nevertheless, going back to the substance of the article, they noted that Volkswagen has a program in which they want to save $10.9 billion that will include a myriad of different ways to get that price point or that reduction in cost, including a reduction in staff. This is according to managers, as they said later this week, by the brand chief, Thomas Schaefer, and warned that the high cost and low productivity were making the cars uncompetitive. They also noted that they are in the midst of negotiations with the Works Council over cost-cutting scheme as VW brand, the first step in the group-wide to boost efficiencies and transition to electric cars, which is one of those instances, at least in the United States, the adoption rate of EVs is starting to decline. There are still people buying EVs, but the rate of adoption is decreasing. You're seeing most of the expansion and most people expanding their acceptance rates or their purchase rates is in the hybrid technologies, which is why I think Toyota made the good call. Fiscally speaking, not, of course, as an enthusiast. I wish, if it was up to me, they'd all have 3 pedals in internal combustion engine. But nevertheless, fiscally speaking, Toyota is actually putting a lot of money into hybrid technologies, and that's where the market is currently going in terms of most consumers and their accepted rates. Now, it is a little disappointing because it's basically disposable vehicles, because again, the batteries, and very few people can work on them, but nevertheless, people buy them. Now, they also noted, and this is according to, again, Volkswagen employee by the name of Schaefer, saying, quote, with many of our pre-existing structures, processes, and high costs, we are no longer competitive in the Volkswagen brand. They previously said that they wanted to take advantage of a quote-unquote demographic curve to reduce its workforce and have pledged that it will not carry out dismissals until 2029. They're going to have to accelerate that quite a bit, I believe. They also said that they hope a bulk of the 10 billion euro savings will be achieved through measures other than personnel reductions, although they said they'll define them later this year. They also said, quote, we need to finally be brave and honest and throw enough things overboard that are being duplicated within the company or are simply ballast we don't need for good results, unquote, according to Killen. Again, is Gunnar Killen, who's a human resources board member at Volkswagen Auto Group. So it'll be interesting to see, again, all these companies are scrambling to try to keep up with and try to overtake Tesla. Again, Tesla has a huge margin ahead of them. They're winning by leaps and bounds. They're starting to catch up a little bit, but there's still that huge gap. And Tesla is starting to reduce their prices, which help fuel their sales exponentially. And it'll be interesting to see which one of the major automotive companies are able to actually compete with Tesla, as Tesla just keeps opening up more factories, getting more attractive price points. And again, they have a phenomenal amount of technology. They have exceptional engineering capabilities. It'll be interesting to see if they could actually if anyone actually does catch up to Tesla. But as I always say, time shall tell. Now going over to the culture part of the podcast, you have Light Bling tweet is roasted, with the top comment being Yuengling. Now, Bud Light used to be a beloved brand, which is quite literally worth billions of dollars. I mean, in one fiscal quarter, though, they managed to shoot themselves in the foot. Although, well, you could debate if it's as bad as Governor DeSantis shooting himself in the high-heeled boots. But is an instance where in Q2 alone, they lost $400 million in sales, just vanished at Bud Light. That specific brand, $400 million, gone because of their business blunder of the century, hiring Dylan Mulvaney for $185,000 to be a brand ambassador. And they even gave Dylan an iconic little can with Dylan's face plastered on it, which should probably be in a business museum as the perhaps most valuable piece of merchandise ever produced in terms of having a negative effect on the business. Because I can't, and let me know in the comments, I can't think of another instance in business history that has so visually destroyed their sales and their culture. Now they're scrambling. Bud Light is trying to appeal to what used to be their core demographic and their old customer base. They're trying to gain them back while simultaneously sponsoring quote-unquote kid-friendly drag shows, which isn't a real thing, obviously, with anyone with a modicum of intelligence would tell you. Now, this is a instance in which it looks like they have an ambassador, a sports balls player, by name of, or is this a rapper maybe? It says #KillaTrav. But when you click on the profile, so I don't know if Bud Light just can't social media. So they did a hashtag @KillaTrav out there making it look easy, and it's some schmuck that they actually paid, perhaps or most likely a copious amount of money, to have a Bud Light bling around his neck, and him, it doesn't look like he's inebriated, so he looks like he did make a cognitive decision to wear the Bud Light medallion bling on his neck. But when you go to the person that they tagged in here, I mean, this person has 563 followers, and it said that this person joined Twitter June 2011, but there's zero posts by this person. There's zero profile picture. There's not even a background profile picture. Not to brag, but I have a pretty cool background picture. It's a vintage gas station with my little Honda. Pretty cool. @NICTOPPING. Now, this is about 2 seconds long. I don't even know if this audio will play it really quick. No. So again, I'm guessing, I got 53,000 views and only 263 likes, which is also known as terrible when it comes to social media. Although, what does Google say? Who is KillaTrav? Trav. It looks like it is a sports balls player. And this person's got 5 million followers on the Instagram. And yet, this person doesn't use Twitter, apparently. Interesting. So it is a sports balls player, apparently. Again, trying to appeal what used to be their core demographic of people who drink copious amounts of beer and watch sports balls. Now, in the comments, someone actually said something that says agreed. Someone by the name of Radical Hockey with 225 followers. And it looks like person, I don't know, I don't want to say he's brain dead, but he's one of those people who repost all the free scams where, oh yeah, if you just retweet this, you could win $100, which is a sure sign of someone's only have a modicum of intelligence. But that did get 3 likes, and he said agreed. Now, Mr. Drew James says, quote, Mr. Pfizer, fitting that he's now representing the woke beer brand, unquote, getting 42 likes, and implying that this sports balls player had apparently endorsed or maybe got a branded deal with the pharmaceutical company by name was Pfizer. Someone by the name of XTASY says, quote, like dumping Bush stocks, unquote, getting 30 likes. PJ says, quote, weird way to show you smoke pole, but whatever, unquote, getting 97 likes. Someone by the name of America. But again, F for marketing because their profile emoji, and again, emojis on a profile name is suspicious enough. But this person's emoji looks like it's just a bunch of golden coins. And the United States is not using gold currency for quite some time, to say the least. Doesn't even have a picture of America. And this person, let's see. Is another brain dead, well, or perhaps a nicer way of just saying someone of a lower of intellect level, saying, oh yeah, follow, click this for retweets. Oh, yeah. God, these people are, it's a good example of someone who drinks Bud Light, perhaps, in terms of their intellect level. This person retweeted something that says, Taco Tuesday, I'll send 3 people money for dinner, just like and retweet. Drop your PayPal and Venmo below. Which, ridiculous to say the least. But that's the kind of person who currently likes Bud Light tweets these days, or posts. Now we continue to scroll down. Blue Dog Democrat says, quote, where's Dylan, unquote, getting 8 likes. Bourbon Investments says, quote, too easy to rip on him. How is his brother so cool, but he's such a tool, unquote, getting 3 likes. And the one that got more likes than all the others is simply by someone by the name of Guns with 2 N. And this person simply says, cheers. And it's a picture with a can of good old Yuengling beer in front of the American flag, which many would say is the actual antithesis of Bud Light. It's the exact opposite, especially when you see of all the flags that are at the Bud Light events that they sponsor. You don't see American flags. You see colorful flags, not American flags. Now, that picture of the Yuengling got 104 likes and 1.3 thousand views. To say Yeti, a little bit of ADHD there. That's where you can sometimes put your Bud Light press appropriately. But nevertheless, Yuengling is definitely the winner when it comes to the Bud Light boycott. Their sales are growing exponentially, their brand value is increasing, and they're still family owned, which is exceedingly rare, as most other beverage companies have sold out throughout the years. I mean, most of the brands we know and love, or used to know and love, are no longer owned by the families of people who established them. I mean, if you're ever curious about who owns the spirits companies, I mean, one of the largest is Brown-Forman. They're the company, or the parent company behind one of the most iconic brands, which is Jack Daniels. I mean, a lot of those companies are actually owned by a larger holding company. But nevertheless, get back to the comments. You have someone by the name of Celtic Semper Trianus saying Bud Light is still gay, getting 25 likes. Jake Radowski says, quote, all-time sellout, getting 18 likes. Sean Elderoy says, quote, someone to introduce Kelsey to Mulvaney. Taylor needs a new album. Sorry, not sorry. Unquote, getting 20 likes. Derek Mesker says, quote, tuck your sack back 24-pack. Woke. Unquote, getting 43 likes. Albert Raving saying, quote, Mr. Pfizer is raking in the money. Unquote, getting 29 likes. EB says, quote, hey, hashtag Tyler Kelsey, vax, not enough woke shit for you. Now, Bud, shame, unquote, getting 43 likes. Low T guy says, quote, thigh slapping LMFAO right now. With every post, you make it more enjoyable to not be drinking your beer. First, you turn a man who says he's a woman, but dresses up in little girl outfits, and now you turn to Mr. Pfizer. What's next? Can't wait to see. Your stock is lower than your tea, unquote. And that got 40 likes. And as the youth might say, they're viscerally ratioed on the Twitter. And again, given the actions and lack of actions of Bud Light, I don't see the boycott going away anytime soon. As cliche as the saying is, this could just be the new norm of their sales, or more accurately, their lack thereof. Now, other interesting cultural news, you have Target using fake Black Friday promos. Their prices were the same, but the sign was slightly different. And this is something where I've been suspicious of for, truth be told, decades. When it comes to Black Friday specials, it's always instances where, not all the time, but many of the time, it's not really anything more than a different label. The price point is exactly the same. There's perhaps the most boring Amazon list ever, but my Amazon wish list, which is mainly just books, is one of those instances where I'll check the prices throughout the year, and I can't help but notice the month before Black Friday, prices, if anything, they go up by a little bit. Then Black Friday, sometimes they come down to the exact same where they used to be. There's not really a lot of great deals to be made out there, with a couple of random exceptions. But this is a woman going viral right now, and this comes from someone on the Twitter saying "say cheese," and it got 5.4 million views. And it's about 30 seconds long, and it says before the video she types out, or the Twitter user types out, a woman is going viral for showing the Black Friday deals at Target are misleading and the same prices they have been advertising all month. And it literally is. All they did was change the top of the sign, or the little paper sign, from the iconic Target red and the Target logo to a black banner top that says Black Friday deals with the Target logo. And if you do have suggestions for picture-in-picture software technologies, I greatly appreciate it. I mean, examining a couple, but still have some issues with this camera. So if you have any ideas, I'd appreciate the feedback. Without further ado, I'll play that really quick.
Oh, okay, what about this one?
So it looks like the first thing was a TV, and it perhaps also shows how lazy Target is. Everything is exactly the same. The description of the product price, the savings, which they claim. So they claim it was before, and they're so lazy. The sign was just under the Black Friday. So as soon as Black Friday's gone, I suspect they just took off the sign and went back to the norm, which is the same. And it said, sale $649.99, save $80. And then the new one is sale Black Friday deals $649.99, save $80. Although, realistically, you could actually save $650 by just not buying the product you don't need to begin with. But, nevertheless, what's the second item they go after?
Oh, okay, what about this one?
Second item, another TV, $429.99.
Black Friday deal?
I don't get it.
Exactly the same. Another one, another TV, Samsung 50-inch. Jesus. Which goes to show how much... It's fascinating to see how some technologies exponentially actually decrease in cost throughout time. Granted, TVs are also stealing your data since they all have microphones and cameras, all that stuff built into it. But nevertheless, a Samsung 50-inch TV before the Black Friday sale, unquote, unquote, was $329.99, and they claimed its regular price is $349.99. And again, they're so lazy. It's even the same font. Everything is the same except the banner, instead of it saying sale, it said Black Friday deal. I don't know who's working in the graphic department at market for Target, but that's got to be an easy job to just switch that one thing out.
That's the same.
Bro, that's not a deal.
I don't get it. I'm confused.
You shouldn't be confused. You should be enlightened, if anything, from the situation to show that a lot of these deals, unquote unquote, aren't really deals. It's just putting lipstick on a pig, which for some people at Target might be or who shop at Target might be an improvement. But nevertheless, I think most of the comments will agree with my sentiment in terms of, well, yeah, it's mostly a ripoff. Now let's go comments and find out. Again, they got 5.4 million views and 36,000 likes. One of the first clip, someone by the name of Clips, which gets an A+ for marketing because they responded with a clip. It looks like a dad freaking out and getting upset, and the text is Target executives. They got 2.7 thousand likes. Someone else targeted or had a clip in which they have a TikTok video where they say, quote, "This TikToker isn't bullshitting," and it's someone describing the same phenomenon, getting 2.4 thousand likes. A lot of people. This is one of the most popular memes. This reply was from Smell Good, and he says pretty much, and it's one of those things where it's from the movie. I forget the movie. Is it the Gladiator film? It's one of the instances where the guy says hold, and then he says now, and the three different pictures are, Wednesday $4.99.99, Thursday $4.99.99, Black Friday $6.99.99, marked down to $4.99.99. And it's true, that little meme has been true for so many items for so many years. So I mean, the best way to actually keep track of it, and again, I don't know how pertinent it is or how relatable this is to other people, but when my business is buying some things that are more commodities for some of these events, like we'll buy some like branded pens or ammunition for our cybersecurity. One of our signature events is called Shoot, Suppress, Suppress Security Fears, where we talk about cybersecurity, shoot, suppress pistols and rifles. So we'll actually buy the ammo for the events. And the only way, realistically, you have the kind of the price in your ammo, kind of like a lot of people will remember the price of gasoline. And so there's instances where I thought the deal was pretty good, and it was good. I actually checked my expenses from last time I purchased ammo for the company, which was probably about 12, 18 months ago, and I saw that the price per unit for 9mm was actually 12 cents less this year than last year. Now, that is a huge savings, because again, I did the same comparison. It was the same manufacturer, same material, same bullet weight. Everything was exactly the same. And even that's including the shipping, as well as the insurance for the package, the discretionary packaging, so it doesn't have logos or anything on it, or doesn't have a little bit more discreet, I think is what they say. And it was still like, it was 11 or 13 cents lower per round. That adds up. So that is actually the instance where Cyber Monday, and I think that's technically a Black Friday online deal, whatever they want to call it, that was actual savings. So when it comes to, I guess my 3 cents or my recommendation for when it comes to Black Friday sales or Cyber Monday sales is, again, it's hard to track if it's a newer item or an item that's a one-off, but if it's more of a commodity, such as ammunition, where they really don't change too much throughout the years in terms of the manufacturer, the materials, unless you go with the whole different casing, which is a debate in and of itself if you should or should not do. But it's an instance where if you want to know if your Black Friday deal is really good, track that product for a year or two to actually track the prices for it. It's also, again, my 3 cents, probably a good sign is if you actually need the product or want the product, because again, most everything on Black Friday deals you really don't need. It's just more of a want or an impulse buy, which again, people live their lives how they want to. That's just not my style. That's, I would say. So it'd be interesting to see. I mean, all the other comments are just roasting Target. And I'm trying to see if there's any actual positive responses. So it'll be interesting to see. Again, you also have all the controversies around Target having a myriad of Pride materials, also having a Pride Santa Claus, a trans nutcracker. It's an instance where they're infusing controversy into the brand, as well as having these type. I mean, this is just yet another reason to boycott them if you're against Target. And interestingly enough, I can't help but wonder, what's Target's stock price looking like this week? Target. You could probably say it's basically no change. It's negligible. It's increased by 0.78%. That's the 5-day trend. Now, again, it might crash in a second or two because it's the stock market, but it doesn't look like... And even the major news, like you just search Target News, it really isn't hitting anything yet. So this isn't, while it's trending on social media, none of the major news articles are actually discussing how their Black Friday deals and how these deals are actually not, in fact, so good. And again, this might be a long-term effect in terms of, do people start boycotting them now because of this, or is this the thing that pushes people over the edge? Now, let me know in the comments, would you ever shop at Target again with all the controversy, as well as now this most recent controversy with the not really Black Friday deals? Be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Now, going over to the political part of the podcast, you have 80% arms in the Second Amendment for the win, while a Fifth Circuit Court rejects the ATF rule. Now, 80% arms actually escaped a communist country. Well, some might call it a communist country known as California. It's fascinating. I've heard it about a couple times. Joke, obviously, kind of. But they escaped California to come to the freedom of America, or even better, arguably, Texas. So now they're a Texas-based manufacturer of, as the title of the company would incite and obviously think, 80% arms. Now, an 80% arms or 80% receiver is a receiver in which 80% of the machining has been done by the factory already, and the end user completes the 20%. Now, I was going to say, I don't know if YouTube would just take the video down if I were to grab one off the shelf for display purposes, but it's an instance where if you ever look at an AR-15, the receiver, that's where all the pieces are joined together. And by the ATF and the US by the laws right now, that's where it is serialized. And if you buy a firearm from a federal FFL or Federal Firearms License, or if you are a professional manufacturer of firearms, it does have to have a serial number. And of course, they tax it every which way. It's quite more abhorrent and disgusting if you actually look into all the taxes that are put on the firearms in the United States when our country is founded on it. But nevertheless, it's an instance where it's not complete. It's in majority of states, it's treated as a paperweight. Because again, only 80% of the machining had been done to the material prior to the customer getting it. So people would buy that and they would turn it into a firearm, which the government has ruled, since I forget which actual ruling it is, but it's an instance where you keep that firearm, you don't have to register it, you don't need a serial number on it. It's your personal protection firearm. If you want to sell it, that's where legally you would be considered a manufacturer, and that's where you would need the government paperwork. You need to pay taxes on that. That's where really a lot of the regulation comes into place. Again, I'm not a lawyer, although I do own a suit. I would argue I actually have morals and values, but nevertheless, this is not legal advice. And the ATF started to sue. They started to claim, oh yeah, you know what? That we're going to consider that a firearm, even though again, it's a paperweight. You can't do anything with it until you finish manufacturing it, until you do that 20% of the machining, because you can't even put a trigger in it. It's literally just a receiver, but you have to hollow it out. There's no trigger there. Now, this comes to us thanks to, again, we're just going straight to their website, 80percentarms.com, and specifically they say, quote, the Fifth Circuit's landmark ruling in Vanderstock v. Garland striking down the ATF's frame or receiver rule marks a pivotal moment for the Second Amendment advocates and home firearm builders. This decision not only represents a win for 80% arms, but also reinforces the rights of all Americans to bear arms under the current legal framework. The court's ruling sharply criticizes the ATF attempt to expand the definition of a firearm, frame, and receiver, highlighting how such overreach could unjustly criminalize law-abiding citizens. By drawing an analogy to the cakes that look like food trend, the court illustrated the absurdity of regulating an item merely based on appearances. The victory, though significant, is not the final chapter of this legal battle. The Supreme Court's stay issued on August 8th acts as a temporary pause, signaling a continued battle in the courts. The court's decision, however, sends a strong message against the ATF's attempts to reinterpret laws beyond their intended scope, emphasizing the importance of staying true to the precise wording of the Gun Control Act. For supporters of gun rights and home firearm building, this case is a testament to the power of standing firm in our beliefs. It underscores the determination to challenge any overreach by agencies like the ATF. While there may be more legal hurdles ahead, the path towards upholding our rights looks promising. This victory is more than legal triumph. It's a reminder that, united in defense of our rights, we can stand against formidable challenges. This case is not just a win for the court of law, it's a win for the future of our Second Amendment rights. Unquote. Which, again, is very true. And if the ATF had their way, this business would not exist. And again, if you're a home firearm builder, or heck, if you're just any American at all, this company is a great company. I'm not paid by them. I'm not a brand ambassador. I don't get paid or any kickbacks or anything like that. Just a fan of the product and what they stand for, which again is enabling and empowering citizens to defend themselves. And this is a huge, important piece of legal victory because, again, it would redefine everything as a firearm, which, again, is one of those things where that ripple effect, or the domino effect, they're just slowly but surely trying to chisel away at our rights. It is fascinating to see the ATF increasing. Just nice. I don't think it's a nice way of describing their unethical actions, but again, they're not supposed to be passing any laws. But they've been reinterpreting laws to get their own way, which again is morally abhorrent and disgusting. Which is why I highly recommend joining and donating to some Second Amendment advocacy group. Again, I'm not a paid member by any of the major ones, but Gun Owners of America is a great one. I believe that's probably the top one I keep hearing about. The NRA is, a lot of people pejoratively call them like rhinos, Republican name only. They've done a little bit for increasing the rights of the Second Amendment, but I think a lot of people associate them with compromise and not actually doing enough, like actually repealing stuff like the NFA Act and a myriad of other things that are chiseling away at the Second Amendment. But nevertheless, I highly recommend joining one of those organizations because the fight is not over. It's going to be a long-term battle to win the war, so to say, or something like that. Now, other interesting political news, you had the DeSantis War Room highlighting Kim Reynolds' Iowa endorsement. Perhaps they simply share the same size heels and high heels. I mean, there's a lot of overlap when you get an endorsement like that. Perhaps they just double their wardrobe. Perhaps. I'm just saying it's a possibility, and some people might argue that's a benefit. Now, specifically, the DeSantis War Room said, quote, Ron DeSantis has momentum in Iowa, whether the corporate media will admit it or not. And they have a whole poll or a thread on this, and they say, quote, DeSantis received the historic endorsement of Governor Kim Reynolds, Iowa, who just won re-election by nearly 19 points and is viewed favorably by 81% of Iowa Republicans. Reynolds is the first governor since 1996 to endorse the Republican primary? Really? Reynolds is the first governor since 1996 to endorse a Republican primary. What's been going on with Iowa since 1996? Really? That's kind of pathetic. One would guess it'd be not so infrequent, unless their governor's been Democratic for so many decades. Nevertheless, they also highlight a poll where they say the Iowa poll in August found that Reynolds remains the most popular Republican state, having 81% view her favorability. Let's see, her favorability ratings in that August poll outperformed the Republican 2024 field, including Trump, who has rated as favorable by 65% of likely Iowa caucus goers. So the DeSantis campaign put out that poll where they just said that, again, I'll reread this. Her favorability ratings in that August poll outperformed the Republican 2024 field, including Trump, who has rated as favorable as 65% of likely Iowa caucus goers. Now, I'm looking. They oddly enough didn't tell us, well, what's the current favorability rating for DeSantis in Iowa? Again, I'm not saying it's as bad as Chris Christie, 0 to 3%, but that's probably a good question to ask, right? But oddly enough, they didn't include that. I'll go back to their quote. They say, quote, Reynolds' endorsement isn't just symbolic. Reynolds is hitting the campaign trail with Ron DeSantis, introducing him to voters, doing interviews, attending fundraisers, and improminently featured in DeSantis' latest 20 TV ad. Now that got 285 likes, which that's not great for social media. So 285 likes for that. And they have a whole thread where they talk about people who have other Iowans who had endorsement, including Bob Vanderplatz. And they claim that Vanderplatz is known as a kingmaker in the state after endorsing the winner of the Iowa caucus in 2008, 2012, and 2016. I think that's a lot more compelling than the previous note, although perhaps that's also just an indication he's good at predicting things. Don't get me wrong, he's also giving the endorsement. Now I'm scrolling down to see where are the comments for this. Let's see here. So they responded to their own oh yeah, they're doing a threads thing. Wow, so you have to scroll quite a bit to actually get to the comments. But nevertheless, we found the comments. Someone by the name of Spooky Hollows says, quote, historic endorsement, LMFAO, unquote. I got 0 likes. This is very unusual. Because usually the comments are getting likes. But the comments are much, much fewer, and there's not so many likes. Perhaps it's just because people don't want to read these threads, perhaps. Someone by the name of Bill Matee says, quote, that endorsement is going to cost her governorship. I'm here for it. That got 1 like. Perez says, quote, who? Unquote. No likes for that, but it did exist. Stephen Kiepert says, quote, 81%? I don't think so. Realistically, it's less than 50%. I know my fellow Iowans, not someone sitting in New York City. Oh, we got a real comment. Joe Marie, or when I say real, I mean a positive response to DeSantis. You have to sometimes use a magnifying glass, but you can find them. Joe Marie says, quote, so thankful for doing the right thing. Unquote, getting 1 like. Let's see. Red Pilstilskin says, quote, she got 200,000 fewer votes than Emperor Trump. Tom Hansen says, LOL, from the state that has no bearing on the national stage, unquote. Getting no likes, but 5 views. And I was going to say, Iowa's actually a swing state, so it does matter. Interesting. Let's see here. So very few comments. Not so many views either. Yeah, so they had the original statement. That got 200,000 views. What are these? No one wants to retweet that. I just want to see. Well, a lot of people retweeted it. Got 338. No, not a lot, but 338 retweets. So again, they got this big endorsement, apparently, but yeah, interestingly enough, not a lot of people talking about it in the comment section. Now that being said, I can't help but wonder what's the average right now for DeSantis in the polls? So has he increased for once? Again, he started about 30 or 32%. Then he got like crash and burn down to 12. Let me see here. So according to 538.com or projects538.com rather, it looks like I underestimated him. DeSantis started at 34.3% January 9th, 2023 in the poll aggregator. And he's now down to 12.9%. He went up. Last week he was 12.2%? 12.4%. So he's an up and coming, some might say. Maybe. It looks like Trump did drop from 60% to 59.8%. So a little bit of movements. Interestingly enough, Vivek went up by 0.1%, now at 5%. Nikki Haley at 10%. So it'll be interesting to see if this actually helps DeSantis out in the campaign. But I was going to say, based on the feedback of that tweet we just looked at, not a lot of people really talking about it. Maybe a lot of people in Iowa not are on social media. I'm not sure why we're not seeing a lot of actual increases in the social media trend on that, but I thought it was interesting to see that he did get the Iowa endorsement, or the governor's endorsement. But of course, the real question is, how is it going to help in the polls? I don't think it would hurt him necessarily. I don't see it being a downside by any metric, but be interesting to see. As I always say, time shall tell. Other interesting political news, you have Vivek going viral, bringing up Biden's censorship on Americans. Now, it looks like this is a reaction to an original tweet. Now, the original tweet that Vivek is referring to is from Byron York, and this gentleman says, quote, cause for concern. The Biden's team is working with social media platforms to counter misinformation. This time it seeks to counter reports that food and other items cost a lot after the Biden-era inflation. And they noted from the Washington Post. Let's see here. In the Washington Post article, it says, the viral $16 McDonald's meal that may explain voter anger at Biden. Let's see here. And then Vivek's reaction to that, Vivek says, quote, the very people who howl about, quote, threats to our democracy, unquote, are the ones who actually threaten it. Biden is trying to ban criticism of his economic record. This is Orwellian and downright frightful if you think about the implications, unquote. And that got 1 million views, although only 15,000 likes. Now, interestingly enough, I thought there'd actually be more likes, since that is a little bit less than usual from Vivek. Now, going back to the comics section, you have someone by the name of Lars for President saying, quote, government should never work with media to craft a narrative. And it is also a picture of a gentleman with a cardboard sign says, quote, less 1984 and more 1776. And that got 246 likes and A+ marketing, since they're a reference to a iconic book written by George Orwell called 1984, which subsequently, unfortunately, many Americans don't probably know that, because most public schools don't actually recommend books of substance anymore, unfortunately. can't help but wonder disappointingly how many Americans actually know the significance of 1776, how low that number may very well be. Let's see here. Mr. Webminster says, quote, every time I read or hear that phrase, all I think is, thank God we don't live in a democracy, we live in a constitutional republic, unquote. Getting 58 likes. Moderate to severe responded saying, quote, liberals love to accuse us of the very things they are guilty of. It makes us play defense when we should be on the offense, unquote. Getting 85 likes, which, when was the last time you actually saw a Republican in any capacity go on the offense? I'm not saying it's never happened. I'm just saying those times could probably be summarized on a cocktail napkin because of their lack of frequency. Again, I'm still waiting for them to get rid of the NFA, which was passed in 1934. Again, an abomination against the Second Amendment. And again, we have Republican nominees, whether it's local governors, mayors, whatever level of government. Republicans always say, we love the Second Amendment. We're going to protect your rights. Well, then do something about it. Why don't you introduce legislation? Why don't you actually vote to get legislation passed? They were supposed to get suppressors taken off the NFA list, so that'd be treated as a regular firearm. So you have to fill out a 4473, get a background check, in addition, so that you wouldn't have to do the prohibitive paperwork and there's an extra tax on it on top of the sales tax. But of course, they didn't get that across the finish line because they very frequently don't. Now, nevertheless, going back to the comment section. Someone by the name of Moronic Headline says, quote, I invite Biden to tell me my grocery bill isn't that bad, unquote, getting 31 likes. Steven Stritz says, quote, you have to learn to interpret what they say. When Democrats say democracy, what they really mean is Marxism, unquote, getting 44 likes. Olay Mitchell Underdahl says, quote, stop lying, just stop, unquote, getting 8 likes. So I'm not sure if this person is specifically referencing Vivek, saying that he's lying, or if this person is talking about Biden and the inflation. We'll say this is neutral because not very specific in their response. Someone else by the name of CNC says, quote, less concerned about his senility. I know how to say senile. This would be a new word for the channel. Senility? Senility? Nevertheless, let's get a picture of Biden with glasses saying that, and it says more concerned about his totalitarianism, getting 22 likes. Let's see here. Amateur Pundit says, quote, but the word democracy doesn't mean what you think it means. Democracy for Democrats means Democrats running things. Unquote, getting 8 likes. Let's see here. Looks like overwhelming positive responses. Not too surprised for that. Since, I was going to say, everyone should believe that the government should not be in any way interfering with media. One would think everyone would agree that. They don't, unfortunately. But, and one would think everyone would be concerned about inflation, but that's also not the case either. Some people truly believe this is the best time to make purchases. It's the best time to be in America. Some people, I don't know, maybe they're just bots, but they actually make statements online saying, oh yeah, my grocery bill isn't that bad. The economy's great. Really? I mean, I can't fathom how they think that, but they do. Somebody named Brian Burkowski says, quote, inflation is a tax on the poor, unquote, getting 5 likes. Cancel the podcast says, quote, Biden inflation is very real. My bank account can attest to it. Unquote, getting 10 likes. So that will surely be one of the biggest topics for the 2024 election. It's going to be censorship from the media. It's going to be the inflation. Because that is quite literally something that's affecting everyone's pockets. And it'll be fascinating to see how people vote with that in mind. Or, again, like I said, maybe they don't think it's an issue. Because, again, I go on these Facebook groups where I look at both sides. I'll try to look at all sides, really. It is fascinating to see everyone. You have the same situation. People can look at the store. It's the same price, but 2 drastically different interpretations of that. So I always recommend joining all those Facebook groups just to see what the other side is thinking, what they're saying. Perhaps you can understand, or the lack of intelligence or something to that effect, when you start to see, well, wait a minute, they really believe that. Do they just not have the data? Like, here's your bill from last year. Here's this year. I mean, Can you not tell the difference? But perhaps not everyone's a penny pitcher like myself and looking at their finances and analyzing the data and looking at the grocery bills and saying, well, wait a minute, this costs us much more. Where do we need to make cutbacks? It'll be interesting to see, but as I always say, time shall tell. Now, going over to the business blunder of the day, you have Honda to recall about 300,000 vehicles due to a seatbelt issue. However, the Honda Civic is still safe. And that being said, I can't recommend getting a Civic with a stick shift. As all stick shifts, all vehicles should have them by default. It's one of the most exhilarating vehicles I've ever had. Lowest Honda Civic SI. They only come with a stick shift. I really appreciate Honda doing that for the enthusiast community. Although, if it was up to me, it'd be everyone by default. But nevertheless, going back to the specific article, comes from, let me see here, Oliver Pove over at en.as.com. They noted that it is due to faulty seatbelts. Let me see here. Scrolling down really quick. They know that this is specifically going to cover about 300,000 vehicles in the United States due to the faulty seatbelts. Some front seatbelts in 2023 and 2024 Accords and HRVs are known to be affected at this time. The problem comes from a defective rivet that prevents occupants from jerking forwards in a crash. Now, thankfully, the upside of the situation, no deaths or injuries have been reported yet. Let's see here. They also know that the company is also dealing with another 250,000 recall from just last week due to an engine issue. Though again, thankfully, knock on wood, that issue also did not affect the Honda Civic. Now, they also led on to say that Honda has been dealing with about 16 car recalls this year, though it is less than many of the other competitors, with, of course, the iconic Ford Motor Company being at the top. So this is from someone on Twitter by the name of Hallmark's Catalog, and they say this is the list of top 12 companies actually with the most recalls according to the National Highway Traffic Safety Association for the first half of 2023. So this is just half a year. Ford had 31 recalls. Stellantis, which is the parent company behind Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, and a myriad of Italian companies, they had 26 recalls. BMW had 18 recalls. Forest River had 18 recalls. Navistar had 17 recalls. Mercedes-Benz had 14 recalls. Nissan had 14 recalls. Daimler Trucks had 13 recalls. Jaguar had 13 recalls. Jayco had 13 recalls. Honda had 13 recalls. And Volkswagen coming in at 11 recalls. Which, again, I'm not giving financial advice or buying advice, but a Porsche is pretty darn reliable in general. And, like all good sports cars, or perhaps the last remaining true sports car, or, yeah, I'd say a little bit better than, not quite a hypercar unless you get the GT3 RS, but nevertheless, and actually, GT3, one of them doesn't even come with stick shift. But nevertheless, Porsche overall is very much dedicated to the stick shift, which is what every car should be by default, and the best fun you could ever have driving. And it looks like they are in last place in the number of recalls, which is a good thing. Now, the issue with Honda is their whole brand is reliability. I mean, especially, no one's going to compare a Porsche to a Honda, unless they're perhaps copiously inebriated. But it's an instance where Honda's known for reliability. You're not going to get the most horsepower out of a little Honda. You're not going to be even breaking records on the lap. Or when you go racing, you're not going to be in first place unless you are a really good driver and the other drivers are not so good. So it's one of those instances where you're paying for reliability. You know this car is supposed to last 1,000,000 miles in a quarter of a century. My family still drives a 2001 Honda Accord. It still runs. It's that durable. Partially because it's a good old-fashioned internal combustion engine and Japanese engineering. So it'll be interesting to see what this does to the brand, where Honda's whole brand, first and foremost, is reliability. And these recalls are just knocking away at that reputation. Because, as I mentioned a couple minutes ago, this is not the first recall they've had this year. They've had several. And, again, there's a silver lining with this particular situation. No one's passed away from it. And no one's been injured from it. So that's great. But, I mean, this is ridiculous. This is from a defective rivet. Again, were the machines not calibrated properly? Did they not test it when it was leaving the assembly line? Again, it just seems like the quality control is just not where it used to be. And that's like a lot of these automotive companies, but with Honda especially, their whole brand is reliability. So to have a brand whose whole thing is reliability, to have them have yet another recall, that's got to be the business blunder of the day. Again, thank you everyone for taking the time to tune in today. We're trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of December, so if you click that button, I greatly appreciate it. Also, if you could leave a comment, that's a great way to give me some feedback on how I could improve the channel or just improve my own speaking abilities or lack thereof. Any feedback is greatly appreciated because I do want to improve the quality of the show. Also, and lastly, don't forget to take time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe, fight the good fight.